It's ding ding, 2 men in a ring. We put pride in your stride and a quiver in your liver. You want 'em, we've got 'em, coming to you. Loud and proud, he's the biggest, he's the baddest. It's Mr. Gavin Davis on the Gavin Davis Podcast Show.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the Gavin Davis podcast featuring my co-host Dave Bruff. Tonight, we've got our first guest on the podcast. Okay, good friend of mine. Spent a lot of time with him training, so I want to welcome to the podcast a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu first-degree black belt and the RAF team captain, Stuart Paddy Bonner. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
How you doing, Gav? Pleasure to be here with you boys.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, mate. Me and Dave do appreciate it. We got some questions lined up for you. So what we'll do, I'm just going to give the sponsors a quick mention on the podcast, and we're going to go straight into it. So I want to thank the sponsors, Sandbach Judo Club, Robert Sadler Construction and Consulting Company, Kevin Mauer Driveways, Matt's Barbershop, Josie's Chippy, Clarity Valeting and Detailing, House of Jiu-Jitsu, Cyprus, Nuts for Jiu-Jitsu, the Grappler's Gift, Craig Stanton, and Kazane Events 2023 with Luci Delgado. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go straight into the podcast. So what I want to do, I want to talk about your beginnings, Paddy, in martial arts. So if you just want to start with that, where you started training, how you started training, and how you got into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene.
I actually got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu completely by accident. From when I was a kid, I used to play a lot of football. I actually left school to play football. And it was only once I joined the RAF that I properly started doing any sort of martial arts. I turned up actually to play five-a-side football in the station gym. And there was a lad there that turned up called Andy Davis, who was turned up to teach Vale Tudo Jiu-Jitsu. But when I sat down and chatted with him, he basically said to me that people didn't want to train with him because they said that what he was doing was too violent. There was a traditional Jiu-Jitsu girl that taught. Her name was Yola. She was a black belt in traditional Jiu-Jitsu. But I just found that whenever I did attend a couple of those classes, but if there was a bigger, stronger guy there, and it was like, if you put your hand here and you do this, then they'll do a forward flip and land on the floor. And if they didn't want to let me do it, it just wasn't happening. And I was like, okay,
yeah.
So I turned up to play five-a-side football, and I met Andy, and I was like, I was still quite confused. I was like, well, how can you, if you're having to use martial arts, then it's because you have to. You know, you've been put in a situation where you have to. So how can you be too aggressive? If you've been backed into a corner where you can't walk away, you can't, just be the bigger man, turn the other cheek or whatever and wander. If you have to get physical, you can't be gentle about it. And he was the first one that ever introduced me to this. So it was only afterwards that I'd done a bit of looking into him. For me, he was just a guy that turned up at the gym. He used to train with like Lee Hasdale and Dale Adams. Dale Adams was the guy that used to run the Combat Sports Open trials down in Bath. I think he'd done Ultimate Combat as well, the event. I think they were the first one that I seen that was bringing outside individuals. They brought Dan Severn and that to the UK. He was trying to make it. It was early 2000s, I think, there. And he was also judging at some of these events. So he was quite well respected and well known. But for me, he was a guy that I met at the gym when nobody would train with him. So I got the benefit of being his only real student for quite a while.
So were you doing MMA or were you doing BJJ at this time?
I was doing jiu-jitsu, but there were strikes involved. But at that point, there weren't any jiu-jitsu competitions. So there was nowhere for me to test this. It was all right saying, I was rolling with him, but he'd been doing it for ages and he was a bigger guy than I was. And I remember him sitting me down one day and asking me a specific question because I'd never really thought about MMA. It never even crossed my mind.
You weren't a fan of it or anything. You weren't really, you're focused on it at that stage.
I never I wasn't one that started jiu-jitsu because of MMA. I
Right.
seen the first UFCs and stuff, but I didn't see them until after I'd started doing this with Andy. And he was like, "Oh, have you seen these?" And that's when I seen them, and I was like, "Oh," so I kind of got into it first, then seen the early UFCs, and I was like, felt kind of vindicated. I was like, I know this sort of stuff. I know what he's doing there. I
Yeah.
recognize some of that. Um, question. Listen, what do you want to do? Do you want to prove that you can do jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
or do you want to prove that you can fight? And I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, you go to a jiu-jitsu competition, you're just proving that you're better at them than at jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
But if you want to prove that you can do this under in a fight scenario, you're as close to a street scenario as you possibly can, then you have to prove it against another trained martial artist who's not necessarily trying to do the same thing.
Okay.
And that was the first time I ever thought about MMA. He'd said then, you want to try it against a wrestler or a striker or whatever. And I was like, okay, we can do this.
Okay.
And that's when I started getting into things like I think the first competition I entered was the open trials. That's when I met Dale Adams and Nicky, and they were,
Yeah.
at that point I started to realize how many people knew Andy.
Yeah. So what I want to do, I want to fast forward a little bit, and this will bring Dave into the conversation as well. So the next question I've got is, I met you in 2015 through BJJ and the RAF, yeah? So you were team captain,
Yes.
and you still are team captain. And I joined the RAF in 2015, came up and started training with you, John Mafflin, and Scouse and all the lads.
Yep.
First, I'm going to be honest, because it's an honest podcast. Our first impressions of you, I didn't know how to take you because of your sense of humor and the way you come across. But I'd like to think over the last 7-8 years that we've got quite close. You know what I mean? Like, I've got a lot of respect for you, especially with what you do on the mat, how good you are. And we've had some amazing trips away. So we've really bonded a lot the last like 6-7 years. What were like your first impressions of like meeting me and everything, and like me coming into the team and that around 2015? Because like for me it was a big thing, because I put a lot of pressure on myself joining the Air Force to bring what I had from a martial arts background into the team.
Yeah. Well, I'd completely agree with the first part. I know it's very difficult sometimes. I can be a bit abrasive, and a lot of the time, it's just the way I come across. I've got a really blunt sense of humor.
Yeah.
But some people can take it quite literally. And until you get to know me, it can be a bit difficult to take sometimes. But when you realize it's just who I am, it's nothing meant that way.
No.
What you brought to the team was an awful lot, to be fair. What we tried to do with the team was there'd been a regular disjointedness, if you like, with everybody's training. People would go to a base, they train at a local club, they get posted, they go to a new local club, and they'd have to start basically from scratch. So you could go 2.5, 3 years, be nearly getting a belt, move, and your new club would be like, don't take those stripes off. We're happy if you keep the belt, take the stripes off, we'll tell you when you're ready, sort of thing. So folk were getting put back. And a lot of the time, people were just, they'd watched the UFCs, or maybe they were into MMA and they wanted to get into the grappling bit. So we were getting an awful lot of complete newbies, which is great. See, getting a blank canvas to work with, it's really good. I once heard someone say it's easier to do that because you don't have to iron out any bad techniques, if you know what I mean, or stuff that doesn't quite fit, or don't have to get rid of any irregularities or whatever. If you've got a blank canvas, then you can work with it well. But when you came in, you already had a good grasp of what you were doing, and we had quite a few big guys. We still do have quite a few big guys, but there's not many little guys. And you hear the term big guy jiu-jitsu, little guy jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You were doing the same things, but you were doing them in a different way. and it's great to have that difference in aspects. You know, the size of the individual can be completely different. How you do it to a bigger guy is how it's different to you would do the exact same technique to a smaller person. But how people defend and react with you is completely different as well. So it brought a whole new aspect to other people, and a lot of the smaller guys then could identify with you. I mean,
yeah,
if you've got, I mean, I'm not a big guy, but I at that point was probably the smallest, and then yourself came along,
Stano,
Josh, Stano, yeah, these all came around about the same time.
yeah,
But before that, I was the little guy. I mean, I'm a fighter lightweight or featherweight, but some of the other guys are 95 and 100 kilos plus, easy. So there's quite a big disparity. But when you came along, it was like, you know, we've got a really skilled individual here.
Okay. Right, what I'm going to do, I'll pass you over to Dave, because I know Dave's got a few questions for you, Paddy.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay, so a slightly different type of question, Paddy. I took from your bio that so you were the one who set up BJJ in the RAF, really, the kind of organization of it, and it seems that was a challenge. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a lot of challenges placed in front. It was quite difficult in the fact that even up until like during COVID, there wasn't an officially, I think, recognised by Sport England national governing body, and there's a lot of legislation that goes into being a recognised sport in the Air Force. Part of the problem was, I think I've watched the previous episodes you have discussed about how we felt, or we all feel, that as martial artists in jiu-jitsu or MMA, that an individual you have to be a proper athlete. You do a lot of training and a lot of work to get this. But our work, we're giving people time off work to go and train. Have you done badminton or squash or football or rugby? But with the martial arts, the only ones that they recognised were karate, taekwondo, and judo. And if you did anything else, you might as well have been playing tiddlywinks. So what we needed to do before we could get any sort of support or recognition from the Air Force was to make it a recognised sport. So we had to, there was a lot of paperwork, a lot of hoops and hurdles to jump through. And then what we had to do was to show sustainability. So we had to host, as part of the RAF Martial Arts Championships each year, we had to host it sustained, having X amount of competitors over 3 years before we could even put it forward to be put forward as an inter-service sport. And we had a lot of guys, on the opposite services working really hard on their end to get the same recognition in the paperwork put through, and all the work that comes with ensuring people's travel and accommodation and the time off work to get there, to make sure that you're there over and over and over repeatedly. Because if we do all this work and then work says no, you're not getting away, and the numbers are low one month, they could just turn around and say, well, it's not as popular as you say it is, so now you're not getting it, and you're back to square one. So I started trying to get recognition from the Air Force around 2005 when I came back from Cyprus. By that point, I'd already moved twice in my career, and I'd seen how each time I moved, it pretty much set me right back to the beginning again, and it was becoming an issue. So we had to get an Air Force team and get a sort of affiliation and a syllabus that people could work to, regardless of where you were, no matter where in the world you were at any base, you could still come under the same team, the same syllabus, and have a structure and framework to work through that you wouldn't keep getting reset and reset and reset with. Some people would be really lucky and sent to London where there was loads to choose from, and some people might get sent to the Outer Hebrides in Scotland. You're not going to find much out there.
No.
It's interesting though, Paddy, isn't it? Because I guess it kind of reflects that BJJ was still undergoing this expansion. It wasn't routinely accepted by the RAF as a sport, and I guess that's because how new it was. And it's hard.
Sorry, no, carry on. Yeah.
But you wouldn't think that now, would you, given its popularity? It's in such a short space of time, its development's been remarkable.
To be fair, I think if the shoe was on the other foot, there might have been a wee bit of hesitation, because when it came to getting the RAF to recognise it, what we needed to do was get the other martial arts. So there was a pot of money put forward, and at that point it was karate and taekwondo, and they'd each take, this year you guys can go away on a trip to Japan. Next year you can use that money and you'll go away. The pot of money didn't get bigger. We were just asking for that pot to be split 3 ways, and they could have quite easily not helped us in any way and just said, "No, we're keeping this. This suits us. We're right down to the ground." But to be fair, guys like Graham Jones and Mark Fitton, who were representative of the karate squad, they worked really, really, really hard to get us involved. And in fairness, I think we've repaid that back to them, because right now, numbers wise, growth wise, we were barely double figures at that point when we were starting out. And right now, when we turn up, the karate guys could turn up, and the taekwondo guys will turn up, and the whole team will be there, and we'll outnumber them 10-1 easy. Like all their teams put together compared to ours, we massively. So right now, our guys are now the ones sustaining the association, if you like, through membership. So we've been able to pay them back for the support that they've showed us. As I said, they didn't have to help us, but they did. They knew it was in the best interests of martial arts, and it wasn't just their martial arts. So that was very magnanimous of both of them, and I'll be thankful to they two individuals, forever for that, because what they did to assist us. I mean, it wasn't just me. Kev Capel was, John Mafflin was huge on pushing for it as well. I was one of the original ones that kept pushing, but lots of other people assisted me to get it there. And hopefully it's something that when new people turn up to the Air Force, they won't ever have to put up with what we did. They'll be able to join up now, and as soon as they're going through recruit training, they can message us and say, "How do we get part of this?" And it's all official, recognised, they're insured, and they'll get travel paid for, time off work to come and train with us 2 days a month, every month, so that, as I said, no matter what base you're at, it's all brought together and everybody trains together in a morning session and then an afternoon session on a Thursday and then again on the Friday. So everybody's training together. The head instructors can oversee everybody. You don't have to be at the base that they're at. They've got their own head instructors, but they've got their coaches at the bases, but the head instructors and the black belts, they'll be able to cast an eye over them. So they're getting the final decision on, belts and stuff. We do like a competitive element, pair folk off and make sure that they're used to the rules and the environment and the words of command and stuff. So it's not just about learning the techniques. It's about the respect and the language and a bit of the history that goes with it. And hopefully, I mean, what we did before we got the official recognition, guys like myself and Gav, we were competing nationally before the Air Force had a recognised Air Force team. We got some support from outside companies, from outside groups, but we couldn't call it Air Force BJJ because the Air Force didn't recognise it yet, so we weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
So we were going to call it Legacy BJJ, but there is a Legacy BJJ club. Mauricio's team is called Legacy. That's his brand. So we called it Legado, which is Portuguese for legacy, because this is something that we want to leave behind that will remain part of the Air Force long after we are gone, so that others will get the benefit of the work that we put in. But I think long term it's essential, to be fair.
Okay, so I'll second all of that. Some of the individuals that you've just mentioned there, like Graham and Mark and John Mafflin and that, I feel very honoured to have joined up when I did, because 2015, I think the first inter-services was 2014, if I'm correct there, Paddy. So I felt that I joined up at an absolute perfect time, and the work that them individuals did along with yourself to get BJJ to where it is today, I I can't thank all you guys enough for that. What I want to do, I want to change topics a little bit, switch gears. I want to talk about, now, I might have an idea what the answer is going to be to this, okay? But I'm going to ask it anyway in case I'm totally wrong, okay? Looking at belts and belt promotions, for me, I felt getting my purple belt was a massive thing. It was the most important thing for me, okay? What belt for you was the most important and why?
I thought purple belt. I
Yeah.
thought purple belt personally because I actually got it at the first inters. But I'd been blue belt for about 11 years. I wasn't big on belt chasing, but at that point it was considered the first professional belt, if you like.
Yeah.
A blue belt was, you weren't a white belt anymore, but you're still a beginner. But a purple belt was when you could start coaching and stuff. And to be fair, even at the competitions nowadays, if you watch some of the purple belts, they're demons, they're killers.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to Kev about it, and he said to me that at purple belt, you'll probably know as much as you're going to know. You're going to be as good or not as good. That's wrong. You're going to have the knowledge in your head of the techniques and the toys and that your style, what you want to do, what you want to use, and then what you do is you're refining it at purple belt. You're getting sharper at it, and you're able to now start imposing it. You're going to start working on your timing and stuff.
Right.
And once you've got that, brown belt is more about your opposite side. So for me, purple belt was where I started to feel like I was quite good. I can do this stuff. Blue belt, I was a bit, am I good? Can I do that? When I got to purple belt, I was like, yeah, I really want to, and I started competing a lot more.
Yeah.
I think I won the British gi, I won the British no gi. I went to Rome for the Euro no gis and came second twice, I think. I lost by a ref's decision in the European Masters in Barcelona. And the guy that went on and won it fought him the following week in the final of the British Open and submitted him. So I was like, this is good. I know I'm at a good level here. I can do this.
Yeah. I
So
agree. I agree. I like for purple for me, there was a couple of times I'll be totally honest about it. A couple of times I started getting frustrated at blue. I felt that I was beating a lot of blues who were even like a lot heavier than me, and I was having massive success for a good number of years at blue. And I was like, I'm ready for my purple, and it didn't come, and it didn't come. And then once I got it, I was just like at peace with myself. It was like right, like validating what you're saying. It's like, right, now I can run with this. And it's like the pressure's off my shoulders a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I know there isn't a rule change between blue and purple.
No.
There isn't a rule, or for IBJJF anyway. There isn't a real change. Possibly, longer times, but I'm an old git, so everything's 5 minutes for me. I don't do the long rounds anymore.
Yeah.
But once I was able to establish my game and able to force that on other people, then brown belt became about doing the flip side of the coin. So I'm very much a guard player, and I was wanting to work from the guard and win from the guard. When I got my brown, it was about imposing myself from the top, learn the take to get the guard passing, make people carry my weight, get on top of them and stay on top of them. And once I was able to master both of them, then that's when I was told that's when we'd be looking at potentially getting the black.
I noticed that massively with you. I've had a few people say to me, "Oh, Paddy's just a guard player," and I'm just like, "Well, you've obviously never had him on top of you." So,
yeah.
But I noticed that massively with your game that you started developing massively. You're coming on top, with your attacks on top as well, which was good. Dave, have you got anything to add, mate?
I just to pick up on the point, Paddy. You were 11 years a blue belt, and it's interesting because I know the BJJ belt system, the philosophy is quite different, but when you see systems that are, people are just serving their minimum time and grade and are flying up senior downgrades in record time,
Mhm.
how do you, how do you view those kind of grades? I mean, it's probably not something you spend a great deal of time thinking about, but you referred to belt chasers, and there are systems where that kind of thing happens or is the norm.
Yeah, I mean, there are. To be fair, I honestly feel that I haven't had an awful lot of experience of it outside of jiu-jitsu, but I know people that have. Uh, and this is a completely personal point of view, but I used to just think that these people were being fleeced. I know people that maybe hadn't been doing the training, hadn't been doing an awful lot, but they were just being told by the instructor, if you pay me this money in 3 months' time, you can get another grading for your belt, but it's going to be another 150 quid. And 3 months later, it's like another 150 quid, and we'll look at getting you another grading and another grading. And I was like, but do you feel confident in doing it? As in, you can stand and you could demonstrate the technique, but if you were, say, in a fight scenario, could you do that technique on somebody that's actually resisting? And 9 times out of 10, it was no. I was like, well, then do you really know it? I mean, I know most people that most of my students, white belts, after 3 or 4 months, they can do an armbar, they can do a rear naked choke, but they're not ready for their blue belt at that point because they can't do it when they're sparring. And until they're able to consistently do it under pressure when they're really having it put on them and able to remain calm and then able to apply these things, then I don't think it's not practically applicable, if you know what I mean. And I genuinely felt sorry for my friends when they were saying to me, I've got another grading coming up. I just need to find the money for it. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
That's how it came across to me. And that was just from outside looking in. I know it meant the world to them, and it still does.
So
But
when you were,
I don't,
no, and I take that your point completely, and it's a really good point. But when you were 11 years a blue belt, was there a point where you thought, is this going to happen? Am I going to move up? I guess your motivation was that whether you got promoted or not wasn't an issue. You just enjoyed doing it.
yeah, I enjoyed it. There was a frustration. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a frustration. But the frustration that I was feeling was it was work related. So I wasn't with the same instructor for those 11 years. If I had been, then I might have had more cause for grievance. But I'd been moved and then moved again and moved again. And each club that I went to, the first question would be, well, who gave you your belt? Or who gave you the stripes or whatever? And most of them were magnanimous enough as to say, well, we're happy that you keep the belt, but take the stripes off. We'll build you back up. We'll we'll be able to see you. If we think you're good enough, we'll get you there. And you'd spend 2-3 years, you build up, get part of the team, get close, and then the military just on average posts you every 3-5 years, which is about the duration of a belt if you're training 2-3 times a week. I also, when I was doing MMA for a bit, I wasn't focusing as much on the jiu-jitsu as what I do now. What I mean by that is when I was doing that, it was pretty much all no-gi. I was having to do my strength and conditioning. I was having to do my flexibility. I was having to do my stand-up. I was having to do my wrestling as well as my jiu-jitsu. And as I said, I only started doing the MMA because there wasn't BJJ competitions to do. And I wanted to prove that I could impose it on other people. But you can't, it's not like the original UFC. You can't go in and do, well, I do karate, so I can do MMA. You very, very quickly get shown up.
Yeah.
So you had to learn a little bit of each and try and round yourself off and get the strength and the speed and the explosiveness and the takedowns and closing the distance and all that sort of stuff. My problem was I was quite stocky. So I was always against big rangy guys. I had to get close enough. I had to take a few kicks and punches before I could get close enough to use what I was good at, because I wasn't a good stand-up guy. I was quite good with the kicks, but mostly mostly like shin kicks to the knees and the thigh area to try and slow them down to get closed in. But I think if I'd have focused more on just the jiu-jitsu, I might well have progressed a bit more through. Because I was doing so much other training on top of that for the MMA, I was only really doing the one that I loved, which was the jiu-jitsu, maybe twice a week. And even now, if someone was training at my academy twice a week, I wouldn't expect them to be getting their next belt for 3-4 years. And that would be if they were really pushing it hard.
Yeah.
I know there's a minimum, when they say with the belts, there's a minimum of 2 years between blue and purple and stuff like that. But that's for guys that are smashing it 2-3 times a day and they're going out and they're winning every international competition going. You can't hold these guys back any further. But you can't be someone who's turning up twice a week doing it as a hobby and expecting to be treated like these absolute mat rat killers. It's not a case of, well, he got it in 2 years, I want it in 2 years. It's everybody's different, but you'll know when you're ready. You'll know when you're ready to progress.
Yeah.
I don't think you're doing MD any favors by progressing them early.
Yeah, your story mimics mine quite a lot, really, because of the MMA that I did the chunk of it and the cross training. Actually, you're training jiu-jitsu 2-3 times a week instead of 6-7 times a week. So, and then moving about a bit through gyms. What I want you to do, because I don't know if you know this or Dave knows this, but I've been doing a bit of reading this week. I want you to tell us, first of all, about Sergio Pena and your experiences training with him, and just because you mentioned it to me before, you said it was amazing. So just tell us a little bit about him, please.
Sergio was actually recommended to me by Mauricio. I was training. I was rolling with Kev down at RJ Bucks. Mauricio was on the mats. I think he used to train he used to do a Monday class there. And I remember I was talking to Kevin saying, I'm going to Vegas with work. I'm there for 2 months. And I was like, it's pretty much a mecca for jiu-jitsu and MMA. There's so many good gyms over there. And Mauricio just looked at me and went, if you're going to Vegas, there's only one place you should be training. And that's with my friend Sergio Pena. And I was like, well, Mauricio says it. You got to go. So I got in touch with Paul Moran. He was a lovely man. He genuinely couldn't have been nicer. He set me up in every way he possibly could. Picked me up at the hotel, took me to training. I made the arrangements for Mauricio for the classes. We sorted out all the little things like in America. Health insurance is a big part of it when you're training. But once we sorted that, I said, like, I'll pay. They offered me, because you don't have it, you can pay 50 quid and our house insurance will cover you. And I was like, whatever, I'm learning to train it.
Yeah.
But genuinely, Sergio could not have been a nicer person to me. I mean, I was working with a group of RAF lads, and we had one vehicle between us. So me saying, like, I need the car. They were like, we want to go all over Vegas. We want to go to the Strip. We want to do this place and that place. And I was like, I just want to train. And Sergio was like, you can train anytime you like. You paid for the 2 months. Anytime you like. I was like, I want to train in the morning. I want to train in the afternoon. I want to train in the evening. But the guys have the car. And Sergio Pena, he's a Coralwell. Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll come and get you. I was like, sorry? Like, I'll pick you up. I'll take you to the hotel. I'll get you to the hotel. Take you to training. Let's go. We go training. Do a morning class, and then there was another one like 2 hours later. And I was like, "What are you doing after class?" He's like, "Nothing. I stay here." I was like, "Mind if I stay? I've got nowhere else to go." And he's like, "Okay." I used to spend the time between the match picking his brains, but I mean, little things like he walked away from jiu-jitsu for a long time.
Was he a pilot?
He wanted to focus on his family.
Right, okay.
And he said, jiu-jitsu, there was no money in it. So he became an airline pilot.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
He said, where do you stay? I said, well, I used to live in Newcastle. He's like, I like Newcastle. He says, I used to fly to Newcastle all the time. Good night out. And I said, yes. He used to go to Glasgow and stuff. And I was just so surprised at someone who's, such a legend in the game, and has got the the knowledge and the depth, and it goes right all the way back to like the very, very beginning. I mean, when you've got people like Helio Gracie calling Mauricio and telling him you've done really well in your fight today because he happened to beat Sergio, and they went black belts. I think they fought at like purple belt.
Yeah,
This was like
I found a fact online that Sergio is the only man recognized. There might be other people that have done it. However, he's the only one that's recognized that never ever was given a brown. He went from purple straight to black belt.
Yeah.
Officially the only one recognized.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anyone else in the world that's ever done that, but he's the one recognized for it. And then he had that famous fight with Hickson when Hickson was in his prime. I don't know if you know. Do you know much about that?
I don't know much about that one. No, I knew Mauricio told me a little bit about they did a rivalry when they were both younger.
Yeah.
And Sergio just always referred to him as my friend Mauricio.
Yeah, which is nice.
Honestly, the camaraderie between them was great. And I know that when Sergio was across at Vegas, he always trains there as well. Honestly, a nicer man you can't meet, honestly. And if anybody ever asked me, you know, I'm going over to Vegas, who would you recommend? Without a doubt, all day, every day, Sergio Peñas.
Okay. Anything to add, Dave?
No, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Right, Paddy. Let me just have a look where we are on the schedule. And Japan. We went to Japan together. I wanted to talk about Japan. So
yes.
we went to Japan together. It was a good long haul, wasn't it? With that stop in China.
Yeah.
I had an amazing time. We all bonded really well. Everyone, it was a great 2 weeks. What are your memories on Japan from 2017? And I just want to talk about the competition element for you. You were on. What I want to say to everyone listening in is that Paddy had the short straw, really, because I was on first on the first day, on the Thursday, which I always prefer. Paddy was on the last day out of all of us, so you had to go through the 3 days of watching us all compete, and then you were like hanging around. The fight didn't go your way, and I know you were disappointed the way it ended for you. But what were your memories and your thoughts on that competition from the Thursday to the Sunday, and then obviously the training we were able to get in Japan? I
thought personally that was a brilliant tour. It was that far away and that out of the way. As you said, there were certain times that since I've known yourself and like Tom Strathern and people that I didn't necessarily know that well personally, but living in such close quarters, that's where I feel that I really got to know you and Tom. I knew Scouse, I knew Alex, I knew John, but that's where I really felt that I got to know you, and I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, things that stand out to me was the fact that we were all on weight. We hadn't even looked into this.
Yeah.
I know now whenever anybody asks that long haul flights adds weight, adds water weight, a lot of it.
Mate, I struggled out there. It's the only time ever I've struggled with my weight.
Well, we were all sitting in was it Heathrow? We were sitting in London, waiting to go on the flight, and we were all on weight. And we all landed, 4 days before the competition started?
Yeah.
And the flight added like another 3.5, 4 kilos onto us. And although we were all jet lagged and we were knackered, we were training like absolute madmen to try and burn that weight off.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd be all sitting on weight and just be able to nice and relax, stay loose, stretch off, try and get into a good sleeping rhythm. And we weren't able to do that at all. My main memory of it was that I came back from Japan still having not slept properly. The night before, I think I'd spend the whole day absolutely exhausted. I wanted to make myself, it was one of them, I'm going to force myself to sleep through the night. I'm going to force myself to stay awake all day. I'm going to be tired. We're going to get up early. I'm going to train in the morning. We're going to go back into the afternoon session. And then if I have to, we'll go back into the evening session. And we're going to stay awake the whole time because I will sleep tonight. And I'd be exhausted all day. And then I'd get to nighttime and so like, bing, just wide awake.
Yeah.
And I was utterly exhausted. That's all.
It was hard. It was hard because people have got no understanding unless you've done it. How like it's hard enough competing and fighting anyway. But then when you're putting an 18-hour flight in there, different food, total different culture. You know what I mean? And you put all these things in before you even step on the mats, it like magnifies how hard it is. You know what I mean? And then, as I said just earlier on, you had to wait. You were last on, which I'm glad it wasn't me because I like getting on early and getting done. I do, but that's just me personally.
Yeah, I get more nervous watching other people fight than do my own. I think personally because I used to do MMA. If you get stuck underneath somebody in jiu-jitsu that's kind of lie on top of you or try and look for a submission or crush you or whatever, you're not going to get an elbow smashed in your face. For me, it's not a fight, it's a competition. I see it as a game. I'm trying to outsmart them. I'm trying to divert their attention so I can get something else.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a fight because I'm not going to get my teeth smashed in.
Yeah.
So there's not really a fear for me when I'm fighting. I get really nervous when I'm watching other people that I care about. When I'm watching friends fight, it can really get to me. So watching all the used first was probably more nerve wracking. I remember after my fight, one of the other guys in my bracket coming up to me and saying, "That was a hell of a fight. You two were going absolute hell for leather. That was non-stop. I didn't want to fight any of the two of you, and whoever lost that." And I was like, "Really? I didn't think we were going that
No, it
hard."
was.
But
It was a good.
looking back,
Yeah, it was.
back, it wasn't really a hell for leather, but there was never really any stops. If you know what I mean, it was continuously trying to attack.
Yeah.
I thought I had them a few times, but
Yeah, I just remember it being super close, mate, and super like tense, really tense match, really tense.
Yeah.
You know,
the first one always is, isn't it? The first fight's always the worst one.
Yeah.
After you get the first one's usually for me is usually tense, and after that you get into your rhythm and you tend to get more into your groove and you start to be able to play your game more relaxed. I think nerves is probably the biggest hindrance that I've seen for anybody in a competition. I don't think I'm anywhere near. Say like when I trained at Kev's, I was nowhere near the best on the mats down there. Not even close to it. But there was an awful lot of people who were better than me that when they went to competition just seemed to hesitate or just that little bit of nerves that got to them and they weren't able to be as good as they were on the mats at home, if you know what I mean. And they weren't able to show the real jiu-jitsu. And I think by me being more relaxed, I wasn't the best, but I could be more my own style and relaxed enough to impose. I do like to play about a bit, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I'm relaxed enough to do that in a competition scenario as well. And I think that's where I might not be the best, but I got results. I think nerves. I would say, I'd say for competition, it's easy 85 to 90% mental.
I'll agree with that. I've seen lads go to pieces, absolute pieces before, especially in MMA. But I've seen it in BJJ a little bit as well. But I think the same as you. I don't see it as a fight. I see it as a competition, as a game. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you've been in a lot of street fights or you've been in a lot of a lot of MMA fights, it's a slightly different mindset. Yeah. Dave, do you want to come in? Have you got any questions for Paddy on this, mate?
Well, not specifically on Japan, but just picking up on something about making weight. Actually, and you mentioned the weight loss, the weight you put on the way to Japan. I picked up in your bio that you lost 25 kilos.
When I stopped doing the strength training and stuff, I used to do an awful lot of strength training. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean that's a huge amount of mass to shift. So my questions were, what was the motivation for that? And when that happened, did it change what you were able to do in the grappling? Or did it change your style?
It did change my style, yeah, very much so. I used to walk around just under 100 kilos. And I used to cut down to about 94, 95 to compete. I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'7". So that's a lot on a small frame, to be fair. And I had to force it on. I had to eat excess amount of calories and be working really, really hard on the lifting the really heavy weights and that sort of stuff. So it wasn't necessarily that I worked hard to drop the weight. I just didn't work at sustaining it, and it came off by itself. But what I did notice massively was that when I wasn't carrying around that weight, I could just go a lot longer. I could go a lot harder, a lot longer. And I was like, my doctor, the way that my doctor explained it to me, says, doesn't matter whether you're carrying around 25 kilos of fat, or 25 kilos of water, or 25 kilos of muscle, you're still carrying around an extra 25 kilos that your body's not designed to carry. And as I said, it came off. I found that the more the muscle decreased and the more flexible I became, by default, by doing more jiu-jitsu and less of the strength training and working. I did maintain the flexibility because I am old. I stopped doing all of that altogether when I was 36. And I stopped it altogether and just done jiu-jitsu and stretched before and after class. And the weight literally fell off me. But I found that little things, I noticed I wasn't making groaning noises when I was leaning over to tie my shoelaces and stuff. Or I used to be really lazy and put my foot up on a step to tie my laces. And now it was just like effortless to lean straight over. And I couldn't have done, well, I just wasn't doing little things like that when I was much bigger and heavier. But I then found that doing techniques in class, I was just able to maneuver into, I didn't need bigger gaps anymore. I didn't have to use strength to prise things open. I was just able to there was less effort required because I didn't need as big a space to manipulate it, if you know what I mean. I definitely found the biggest improvement in any step of my jiu-jitsu journey was when I wasn't as strong, but I was more flexible, without a shadow of a doubt. I do think it helped me become a better teacher, though. As I was saying to Gav about, we've got bigger guys and smaller guys. I've been both. So now when I'm doing the same techniques, I can say to the littler guys, this is how I do it. But when I'm talking to the bigger guys with maybe bigger, thicker legs or thicker shoulders and neck or whatever that are trying to manipulate a body in a certain way, I'd say, well, what I used to do was this. And it will be different, but it accounts for their body shape and type. I find that helps me able to explain things because I've been in that situation myself.
It sounds a little bit like being overly strong is a disadvantage, or it stops you developing.
I definitely found that. In fact, I think it stopped me from trying to mentally, if you know what I mean. I found that if I was able to get on top and I was bigger and stronger, I could just crush people. So I was happy to. Whereas now, if I get on top, I have to let the gravity do the work. So I don't want to just lie and crush them. I want to be able to submit them. So I need to have my hands free to be able to get their neck or their arm in and manipulate it while keeping that pressure on. But if I'm just, say, like got a cross face and locking my arms up and pulling them in and really crushing them, I might be making them uncomfortable, but unless they give up and tap to pressure, I'm not going to submit them. So I found that it really opened up and expanded my game technique-wise by getting rid of the strength because I didn't have that option anymore.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think it's an excellent point, really. Anything else, Dave?
Oh, well, that's
okay.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go on, Dave. You go on, please.
No, I think it's interesting because you turn up to clubs and there are big guys in clubs and they dominate, and they dominate because they're bigger, but they're not technical. They can just throw you or flatten you. And a mutual friend of ours, Gav, has just Rob Sadler lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
For a judo competition, but he struggled with how he couldn't use his big man's judo anymore. he'd lost too much weight and he hadn't had time to adapt his game. So it's an interesting.
Yeah, it'll take him a while to adapt that, to change his style.
It definitely takes you out of your comfort zone, so you can't go back to where he would feel normally comfortable, but it'll open up an awful lot more for him. Definitely.
Yeah. What I want to do, Paddy, I want to do a little bit of fun, a little bit of a game. All right.
Yep.
So I'm going to say a word to you or a person, and I want you in 3 words, the first thing that comes to your mind. But obviously, remember, we're live. All right. Okay. So, right. Are we ready?
Yep.
Number 1, Kev Capel.
The boss man.
Scouse.
My best mate.
John Mafflin.
Absolute Tasmanian devil.
Hickson Gracie.
Legend, leader, beast.
Gordon Ryan.
Best no-gi today.
Favorite
I
UFC.
would say ever because he doesn't agree. He doesn't
yeah.
agree. He so I'll stick with his.
Okay. Favorite UFC fighter.
BJ Penn. I named my youngest son after him.
Best grappler ever.
Roger.
No, I thought you were going to go there. Gi or no gi?
Gi. I prefer the gi, but my results in competition are actually better no gi.
Okay. I got a question for you on that in a sec. We're going to come back to that. Favorite comp win?
It was at the British Nationals actually at Brown Belt. We'd spent the whole day there. I was there with David and Bartek from RJ Bucks and Daniel Lewis, and I think everybody had lost very narrowly in their first fight, and everybody was feeling really, really frustrated.
Yeah.
And I know personally myself, I'm a terrible loser, But I felt that there was a wee bit more pressure because everybody else was just feeling it. But rather than them doing what a lot of folk would have done and just went, oh, the heck with this, I'm leaving. Just enjoy your fight. They all hung around and they hung around to like 5:30 at night. They were on about noon and they stayed around for hours waiting for me. And I was like, I can't let them down. And I got to the final and the lad got the takedown, but as we went for the takedown, I was able to get guard and get my hand deep in the collar. I threatened the armbar, and he was hiding his arms from me, so I was able to get the hand deep in the collar, and I grabbed his lapel and brought it over and caught him in a cross collar from underneath, and
Nice.
he just went unconscious on top of me, and I just remember he was lying on top of me and just sort of slipping out and sitting at the side and looking, and I was just so happy to see that they were happy, and I had to message and congratulate. I gave Dan all the thanks for that because Kev had been going through, he went through a few issues, and Dan had been the main instructor at the classes that I'd been attending. So most of the development in my game was down to the work Dan Lewis was doing at RGA Bucks, and I remember specifically sending him a big, massive message that night and saying, thank you very much. That meant so much for me, but I'm glad that it meant a lot for you, and it was because of the work that you put in with me. So thank you very much.
To be fair, I found that when Kev was away refereeing or he was doing stuff, I found that Dan the 2 years that I spent 4 years there, but the 2 years that Dan really took the lead on a lot of the coach, I felt my game improved massively, and I thought Dan was very, very good as a coach. I got 2 more for you. House of Jiu-Jitsu. 3 words.
Home from home.
Konstantinos.
My brother. Family.
Good. I got 1 question for you. Dave, have you got anything before I ask the last question on the podcast?
No, go for it, Gav.
So, me and Dave were talking on episode 2, Paddy,
Mhm.
about being able to hit certain subs, gi or no gi, right? And we were talking about the armbar and the rear naked choke. They always pop up. They're always there, yeah? They're always high percentage. Do you
Mhm.
feel it's easier hitting an armbar in the gi than in no gi? I personally do, because of the
Yes.
grips and being able to utilize the legs high. However, you've just said that you have more success in the no gi with subs.
Yes, I've had more success in getting them. What I will say is, I've had I've had an awful lot of success actually with the armbar and the no-gi, especially at the early stages when people are less sweaty. But I think because it's not necessarily a move that people are looking to defend, I genuinely don't think that in no-gi people are. They think if they're in posture or they're sitting back that they're not really at a threat from it.
Mm.
As soon as you start grabbing at the material and holding on to the gi and stuff like that, people are already starting to bring the elbow back and starting to try and, you know, mitigate any sort of pressure you'll be able to get on the arm as soon as you give them grips. But I found that in the no-gi, they don't react as quick because they don't necessarily see it coming as much. It's not telegraphed as much. Whereas with the gi grips, I think it's easier to get, but you're also telling them, you're giving them signals earlier at an earlier stage to allow them to start defending at an earlier point. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it makes total sense, mate. We had a debate about it last week, Dave, didn't we? And Dave had all the stats out on it, and you know, I think it's like, for me personally, I think it's harder when people started sweating and stuff like that. I prefer it in the gi, but like your game is more than arm bars, though. You know what I mean? Like the wrist locks are in there. You know, right? Like if I'm in your guard, I'm worried about like literally everything. You know, until
Thank
I
you.
can like split your guard, and then I'm still worried about things, but like I'm more concentrated on trying to pass then. Whereas when I'm in the
Yeah.
guard, especially if I get on both knees, it's a horrific experience. Let's say that. Dave, we're going to bring the podcast to a close. Is there anything you want to ask Paddy before we come to an end, mate?
No, I'd just say it's been a pleasure talking to you, Paddy, and listening to your experiences. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Dave.
Anything you want to add, Paddy? Do you think that we've missed, or anything particular you want to you've got in your mind?
The things in particular I'd
Yeah.
maybe like to say is, I know it's very cliche. People give it, oh, jiu-jitsu saves and all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I was able to do for anybody was for my other half. And when I say other half, I don't mean a girlfriend or the wife. I mean my identical twin brother.
Right.
He's literally he's not my best friend. He's the other half of me.
Yeah.
And he was in a really bad way. He's very poorly. His weight was getting really high. He wasn't able to do the sports and the things that he was into doing. And I remember introducing him to jiu-jitsu. And at this point, I think he was about as heavy as I was when I was doing MMA. So he was nearly 25 kilos heavier than me.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I'm going to come up for 2 weeks. I hate doing golf. That was his game. His game was golf. And I hate golf. I'm like, let's hit a ball and walk down a green. I says, I'm going to come up for 2 weeks. And every second day, we're going to go and play golf. I'm going to do your golf. I says, but in the days in between, you're going to come and do my stuff. I says, because I think the fact that he had a bad back from it was a bad injury he got, and he's a painter and decorator by trade.
Yeah.
And it put a lot of strain on him, and his spine was starting to get issues and stuff. And I said, well, if you do jiu-jitsu, you don't have to be the one on top. You can be the guy on the bottom. You can work a guard game. You can do a half guard game. You can manipulate people in a style that suits you and find one that fits your body type. It's not like, well, you can't. You used to do boxing and you couldn't do boxing anymore because he never had the twist of the torso and all the rest of it. His back was giving him issues. And by the time I left those 2 weeks, he signed up, not just him, but his wife and his 2 kids, up to the local club. Jamie up at Rising Phoenix in Kirkcaldy, a lad that I knew from competition. Very good lad. He always makes me feel very welcome up there. But within a year, my brother was competing at the Brits at lightweight. He dropped all the weight. His health massively improved.
Good.
For me, I was genuinely very, very worried that I was going to end up losing him.
Right.
I thought his health was going to eventually catch up on him, and I didn't know how I'd be able to take that. So
Yeah.
I used jiu-jitsu, and his whole life's so much better. It's not perfect, but it's so much better.
Yeah.
So that for me is the biggest. Jiu-jitsu has not only helped me improve my life, but helped my twin brother. So as far as I'm concerned, if anybody has got any issues, I mean, that's also why I take a lot of pride in being an ambassador with Sam Sheriff and the Reorg charity, where they use jiu-jitsu to help people that have got physical, mental disabilities, specifically veterans. But for me, jiu-jitsu is a massive world changer for an individual. It helped change me, helped my mental health, helped me physically. It's done the exact same for my twin brother, and I see it almost every day on the mats with people.
Yeah.
Again, if there are any veterans out there that are looking to get involved and they want any help through the Reorg charity, speak to Sam Sheriff, go online, and if there's anybody in the Lincoln area that is a former veteran and they want to come and train with us, you're all more than welcome.
Yeah, well, obviously you've helped your brother massively there, but you've helped a lot more than your brother. Like the help that you've given me, the help that you've given everyone underneath you from the martial arts team, we all appreciate it, and we all want to say thank you to you, John, Graham, all the people who have taken the lead over the last 7-8 years that like I've known you, and obviously before that as well. So thank you, Paddy. Thanks for having you on and coming on here and sharing your stories with me and Dave. We're going to bring the podcast to a close. Last thing I just want to say is big shout out to all the sponsors. We're going to be doing a lot more podcasts the next few weeks. Okay. So if anyone wants to sponsor the podcast, then please get in touch. Any final word, Paddy?
Just thank you very much, both yourself and Dave, for having me on.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone.